to talk to you about today, once again, my name is E.A.Koetting. What I was going to talk to you about is Norse mythology, and not just the general Norse mythology, but the 9 worlds of Norse mythology, as well as the what's called the runic pathways. That you can look at the 24 Norse runes and how they connect each of these 9 worlds. Why that's important is it's really going to show you, if you're learning runes, you're learning Norse magic, it's going to kind of deepen your experience with it. And I've got it drawn out here, where it's just basically circles with a whole bunch of lines and runes around them. And I'll sit there before bed as my girlfriend's reading her bedtime book that she reads. I'll just stare at this and stare at this for a half hour, and it teaches me an immense amount of just knowledge about the runes. Rune magic and Teutonic or Nordic philosophy is something that I've kind of looked into, but never really took seriously until recently. For the last 6 months, really, it's been a massive just delving into this system. One of the best books I found, I wish I could tell you that I have written the best book I found on the subject, but I haven't. It's Thomas Carlson wrote a book called Uthark, The Night Sight of the Runes. And so the runic pathways I'm going to demonstrate for you today comes from that book, and so I've made a few adjustments to it, but I do have to give credit to Mr. Carlson for actually coming up with the information. My complaint is that he, in his book, he just skims over the pathways. He's like, oh, here they are. But it's like, no. If you dive into this, if you actually dissect it, you're going to learn more about the runes than at any other point. I do want to invite you guys to, if any of you, especially with the Milner hammer there, if you have any additions that you want to make, feel free to chime in. Because like I said, this is like 6 months of study. So if you see something you're like, oh, actually, just throw it out there and we'll just keep the conversation going. Start out, you can see these 9 worlds as being on a tree is how they're usually drawn. But for the sake of making kind of a comprehensive graph of it, I like to set them up in this way, where it's not necessarily on a tree winding in different planes, but all on the same plane. Once again, just so we can kind of have a symbolic reference to refer to. I was going to have this all drawn out earlier, but my tardiness prohibited that. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit about each world, what it represents, and then we'll go through the pathways for between the worlds with the runes. Initially, all things were created in Norse mythology not by some god saying, bring this into existence, but by the elements of extreme fire or extreme heat uniting with extreme coldness. And for people who didn't have access to the kind of scientific knowledge we have, that's actually pretty intuitive. Because, really, when you're looking at the formation of galaxies, it is the uniting of hot and cold that spurs gases to arise and then become matter. And so this is called Muspelheim, is the world of fire, and Niflheim. Did I write this too low? Can you see this at all?
Yeah.
Okay. So my writing is atrocious, so I apologize for that firstly. And so then as those worlds were created, or as those two forces came together, all the other worlds kind of started to come into being. What we can see these worlds as is you can see them as astral domains. You can see them as even people will take them and see them as different worlds, actual planets. One way that I like to approach it, because I like to have everything come back to me because I'm a self-centered son of a bitch, is I like to see these as parts of my own psyche, parts of my own self. And really, when you get philosophical with it, there's not much difference between the self and the outside world. The outside world is just a mirror of what's going on internally. We've got the realm of the gods, and this is Asgard. The interesting thing about the world of the gods, is that those are a very specific sort of gods. They're airy gods. They're focused on intellectual development as well as war, conquering. They're the war gods. But there was a more ancient cult that was worshipped in Scandinavia that predated the Asgard, and those were the Vanir. And so they lived in Vanaheim. And these are gods of sex, art, love, creativity, and magic. And there have been a couple wars between the Vanir and the Asgard that really clashed because of the Asgard just being domineering and trying to take control of too much. The Vanir basically have always kind of kept to themselves. Their world is beautiful, green, luscious, and no matter where you go, if you're astral projecting to these realms, you're always going to be on the side of a lake, no matter where you go in their entire world. And just absolutely beautiful. And free sex, free love, art in everything, living, freedom, more than 3 dimensions. And the Vanir don't really interfere so much, whereas the Asgard are very closely linked to the world of man. And the world of man is... What's that? Midgard. Oh, thank you, yes.
Only one I know.
All right. Now, in the original spelling, and I've done this a few times, but you'd have an R at the end of those, and a lot of the words the R is silent. So rather than pronouncing that Vanheimer, you just be Vanheim. And I'm kind of, I guess, just doing it randomly, selectively, whether or not we're going to put those on there. The word Heim is home. The word guard is, and I'm not sure the exact translation of guard, but it does set up almost like a fortress. That Midgard and Asgard are both fortresses. Midgard is surrounded, the entire scheme is surrounded by basically a giant serpent that is protecting existence from chaos. But specifically Midgard is protected by that. Asgard is protected by some pretty serious walls as well as giants that guard it. We have Lusalfheim, which is Lusalf, light elves, and Heim home. So the world of light elves. And elves are pretty much spiritual entities of any sort. It's hard to say that elves are like their own race of spirits, but basically if you were talking about a demon, an angel, a planetary spirit, an elemental spirit, you'd be talking about an elf. That the elves were the kind of go-betweens, and not just go-betweens between man and God, because that's what we think of is intermediaries between man and gods, but they're intermediaries with all of the different races, except for the giants. And the giants are home in Jotun. I think that J might be silent, Jotun.
It's a Y.
It's spelled almost all the time with a J.
Well, it's pronounced with a Y.
It is pronounced with Y, thank you. Okay, so it's Jotun?
Uh-huh.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And so that's where the giants live. Now the giants, what they represent is the E.A.Koetting, the unformed. The giants existed before any of this existed. Before fire and ice met, there were giants. The giants are chaos embodied. We also have Svartalfheim. If you know German at all, Los is pretty easy to put light, and Svart is darkness or black. So it's the dark elves. Most people call these gnomes or dwarves would be living in Svartalfheim. That is where all things are created, in that it's an underground world that these elves are constantly working around a furnace that they're making everything that exists. So before anything comes into physical existence, it passes through Svartalfheim. In that the will of the gods, the will of men, the will of the Mimir, the will of the elves, all have to pass through here before it becomes reality. And I did miss one of these. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, so this is Midgard. This is Asgard, and this is Helheim. Okay, so we also have the world of Helheim, which most people will basically say that Helheim is the underworld. It's where the dead go. That's true, but Helheim is much more than that. Death itself and the afterlife isn't necessarily just a place that souls go, but the world, the underworld, is itself mystery. That it's that which we don't know, that's which is probably even incomprehensible to the human brain. And so the world of Helheim almost acts as a gateway to all that is mysterious. Thomas Carlson does make the point that once you go into Helheim and you start exploring it, you actually find it brings you to what he calls the dark side of the tree. Now this is the tree as we know it, but that if you go into Helheim, you'll find that it's a gateway to experiencing the darker half of all of these. Sometimes the reverse of them. For instance, I just was writing this the other day, is the reverse of Midgard. So the dark sphere of Midgard would be nighttime, winter, famine, extreme materialism, because this is the Earth. This is the Earth and the cycles of the Earth, and so if those cycles become stagnant or overactive, that is going to produce that. Extreme materialism is definitely a part of it, where even the alphabet that they use, the runic alphabet, wasn't just a way to say things or to communicate information. Each letter of the alphabet is a prayer to invoke a certain essence in your life. And so even speaking or writing is a form of invocation. And we've obviously lost that massively as not just as a culture, but pretty much throughout the entire world. And so with this moment, we're basically living in a reverse sphere of Midgard. Vanaheim would be lust run rampant. So rather than sexuality for the sake of union and love, that it's just sex just for the sake of sex. It's just lust run rampant. Asgard, where they're the gods of protection and empowerment and intellect, is taking all that to use it for war in a dominating sense, that rather than defending your homeland, that you're using war just for the sake of war. You're using your intelligence rather than creating and solving the problems of the world, that you're using your intelligence as a culture to create better weapons, which once again, we're living in a pretty reversed era of the whole system. Lusalfheim, now where that's dealing with the spiritual entities that we can come in contact with, being the elves, the reversed essence of that would be entities that aren't helping you, that are there, basically demonic entities that are there to vampirize or to harm you, and that's more on a. It's pretty easy to project that onto our modern day and say, well, at this point, you do have a massive interest in the left-hand path, black magic, etc., which is great because that keeps my business going. But it does show that there's a disconnect from the lighter side. That most people who come into the occult, which is the experiential knowledge and understanding of spirituality, do gravitate to the light side or to the dark side. Myself definitely included in that. Svartalfheim, rather than using your forces to create and to build this world into Eden, you're using your force, your ability, your will to destroy, as a deconstructionism. And once again, in the occult, we can see that pretty massively, where rather than building new systems, a good deal of focus is on tearing down the old systems and becoming the antithesis to Christianity, Judaism, etc. Where instead we can move forward and create new systems, but that's the reverse of Svartalfheim. Jotunheim, once again, is acausal. It's chaos embodied, and so that itself is a darkness. However, what we'll notice is that throughout the mythology of the Norse mythology, Thor and Odin are constantly going to Jotunheim to speak with the giants. That's where Odin and Thor got all of their information. That's how Odin got his knowledge, sacrificed himself on the tree, was in Jotunheim under the direction of giants. That these acausal forces, these chaotic forces, are what gave the gods all of their knowledge and all of their power. But it needs to be controlled. That chaos needs to be kept in a kind of a certain container. And so if you look at the reverse side, chaos is completely out of control. And then Muspelheim, the world of fire, is unrestrained. Once again, the fire element itself is extremely chaotic, extremely destructive, but if used properly, we all know we can cook food with it. But obviously, if it's out of control, it's not going to be good at all. I didn't talk about Niflheim yet. Niflheim, in its regular element, is ice. It's a world of complete cold, and giants do live here. Ice giants live there, but it's on a spiritual realm. It's stagnancy, it's immobility. That you can focus on Niflheim, especially if you do it through the counter, through the dark side of it, to cause extreme paralysis in your enemies if they're coming against you, to focus the elements and the essence of Niflheim towards those who are moving against you, and it will freeze them in their tracks, or any kind of situation, any kind of obstacle that's in your way that you can absolutely freeze if you're using Niflheim. Of course, the out of balance form of it is you yourself becoming frozen by it. It is said that you cannot enter into the fullness of Niflheim without being completely frozen and made stagnant. You cannot enter into Muspelheim without being completely burned alive. So Helheim, even though it's just considered just be the realm of the dead, is actually so much more than that, because it is a gateway into understanding the mysteries and the hidden aspects of all of this. In that way, it's kind of a Saturnian type of sphere. Now, we've got these worlds here, and on the onset, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool mythology. But once you start connecting the runes to it and the runic pathways that connect each of these together, it really brings a lot more dimension to it, and it brings out the understanding of what this is. I do think I have to say that I don't know that the Norse, in the days that this system was being practiced fully, and this was the kind of faith of the land, I don't know that they got into the technical aspects of it like I'm going to, and like Mr. Carlson has done. But so it's hard to say that they actually recognized all of this, but in retrospect, as we put this together, it does definitely give you a better look at the whole thing. So, you go from the land of pure fire, from Muspelheim, as it moves outwards towards these other realms after they collide. And I do have to say that the creation myth shouldn't be taken as something that happened in the past. We want to take all of the creation myths that are out there and apply them to the present moment. The creation is happening in every moment, and that kind of gives us a better perspective on the expansion of the universe and the evolution of the self and the evolution of the whole, etc. So, as the pure fire moves into Vanaheim, so as the essence of it trickles down, well, you know what, I was going to use red for this. The runic pathway associated with that is Wunjo, or Wunyo. Are all the J's or Y's? Is that true?
Yeah. In German, at least, the J takes a Y sound.
Okay, perfect. So Wunyo which looks like a P, but it's the analogous to the W. Wunjo is joy. And so this pure fire, as it comes into the world of the Viking, the world of art, creativity, and sexuality, love, relationships, it assumes the form of joy. And that's pretty self-explanatory. As it comes into the world of the Lusalfheim now, the light elves, and the light elves, once again, being any spiritual entity you come in contact with, you can probably put as being an elf of some sort, is Kanaz. Kanaz is the rune of initiation, initiation into secret knowledge. That as the pure fire distills itself into the spiritual entities that we work with, that it's an actual initiatory process, that actually lights the flame of initiation. And as that fire travels into the Asgard, to the, for lack of a better definition, the war gods, does it through Ansus, which is creativity, inspiration, artistic inspiration sometimes, and so that's basically just showing the inspiring force of that fire. Now we take it from Niflheim, the cold element, to help create everything. As it moves into Jotunheim, the land of the giants, the pathway there is Thurizaz. Thurizaz is basically uncontrollable force, and that is the giants. That's their definite rune, is Thurizaz. In Magic, if you ever want to send something nasty to somebody, just meditate on that rune and hold the image of them in your mind, and all kinds of nastiness will befall them. Or once again, you can apply this to obstacles rather than people, to events, and you're going to see a massive unfolding of an uncontrollable force that once you unleash is absolutely unstoppable. And so as the cold moves out, it does form that. Now the interesting part of that is it's an uncontrollable force that has the solidity of ice. And so it's, you've got the old adage of an uncontrollable force meeting an unstoppable force meeting a immovable object. The giants are both an uncontrollable force and an immovable object at the same time. We have Rido is the rune, the core that connects Niflheim to Svartalfheim, so the world of ice to the world of the elves. And that's basically movement itself, that the frost, the icy element, the cold, moves itself, and the movement is on several scales, where if you draw this in a divination, if you're doing rune readings, that can often mean you're going to move somewhere. I've seen that quite a few times as I'm doing rune readings for people going, oh, you're about to go on a trip or you're about to relocate. And almost every time it's yes, most definitely. But it's also on a grander scale than that, of movement of the self, movement of the circumstance, movement into a new phase of existence or life. And as this flows into Helheim, into the mystery, this is the rune of Uruz, which is pretty potent, as Uruz is definitely symbolic of an elk or a
Cattle.
what's that?
Cattle.
What's the big a moose? A moose was another one that I've heard. Basically, a huge load-bearing animal, and so as Niflheim comes into Helheim, into mystery, the pathway through that is the cattle. Now, the interesting thing about that is according to the creation myth, that as fire and ice collided, that the ice started to melt, and basically a frozen giant and as well as a giant cow are there, and as it all kind of dethaws, the the cow starts to drip milk out of its udders, and the first giant Ymir drinks of that milk and is brought into life. And so it's interesting that that's corresponding with the cattle rune that's moving from the ice as it's thawing into mystery, not into full creation, but into mystery, into the kind of the unknown. Any questions so far? I'm kind of just going, so feel free to stop me. All right, and so just go with loose outline. This, as the word, the connection, and this is interesting. This shed some light on this for me, and I could be absolutely wrong about what I'm about to say, but it's really cool, so I'm going to say it anyways. Is the rune that connects those two is Algiz. And Algiz is a rune of protection. What's really interesting is in Asgard, the entities that help fulfill the will of the gods are Valkyrie. And it's always been kind of obscure who are the Valkyrie. There are these female entities that are seemingly all-powerful, all-knowing, but for some reason they serve the gods. Well, this is their sign, this is their symbol. And so I'm interpreting that as being that the Valkyrie are indeed elves that are helping the Asgard. You'll notice that there are a lot of correlations between the elves and the different branches. For instance, the god who is the god of elves is himself not an elf, he's a Vanir god. But for some reason, he's ruling over the world of the elves. And so there's a lot of mystery. One of the biggest issues with the entire Norse system is that it was written by a guy not in that area, but in Iceland. And he basically wrote it from the stories that he was told, because written records were either not kept or were destroyed by the church, as they're very well known for doing. So we don't have any records necessarily directly from the Norse themselves, but kind of hearsay that was passed down. So it's hard to say exactly what's going on with this mythology, but the fact that we've got this rune connecting those, that the elves themselves are helping to protect and serve the gods is very interesting. That does signal that they are a type of elf or kind of servitor spirit. And the world of the gods is connected to Vanaheim through the rune Yera. And Yera is basically seasons, patience, and the cycle of things. You can see it's two marks that are kind of interlocked and have a kind of a rotating character about them. And so it's seasons, it's harvest, it's the movement of things. And that's interesting with these two particular worlds, because the Asgard and the Vanir don't necessarily get along. Like I said, there have been several, well, at least a couple of wars between them in the mythology. And so depending on the season, depending on what's going on, they might get along, they might be best friends, or they might be absolute enemies. It is known that even though the Vanir are love, creativity, and artistically centered, that they can sure as hell defend themselves, because they put up a massive fight with the Asgard, and the gods of war, had to call a truce. So they were able to definitely use their attributes to defend themselves. And so on a personal level, to connect with them spiritually is definitely going to give you not only the creativity and the magic that comes with that, but also the ability to really fend off any kind of attack. And then Vanaheim. This is interesting. Vanaheim connects to Helheim. Through the rune Ingwas. Is that right? No, that's not right. And sometimes it's drawn like that. And Inglas is definitely fertility centered. It's a rune of a water rune of fertility for sure. And so saying that the way to take magic, creativity, artistic nature, to take all of these elements and to bring them into mystery, and mystery can definitely be considered to be magical, mystical, and self-understanding, would be through sexuality. That is definitely a sexual rune, and so through orgiastic ritual, or sex magic, or sex mysticism. Now, to go from Midgard, the world of humans, that the connection between the world of man and the world of elves is Dagas, which is day, sunlight, and enlightenment, the final enlightenment. It is the final rune in the Futhark rune series, and it's basically the culmination of all of your spiritual and magical enterprises. Is the final illumination, which is found not through going to the gods or the Vanir, or even the giants, but going to the elves, working with the elves, working with those spiritual entities that make themselves available to us. And Vanaheim connects to, Midgard connects to Vanaheim, once again through a reproductive rune, Berkano, which is birth. It's the birch tree. It's life-giving. Definitely a sexual rune. And so once again, we have the fact that in order for us humans to reach to the state of having that kind of supreme creativity and magic is through rites of sexual mysticism. And these are two that I absolutely love that just blow my mind. It's connected to Svartalfheim. Again, Svartalfheim is where everything is created. And so before anything can go from being a thought or an idea into an actual formation, it goes to Svartalfheim. The rune that connects it is Manas, which is the realm or the rune of the entire human race as a whole, or the rune of the true destiny of man, of what as a human being you are able to do or to become. So what that's telling us is that we as people are able to actually become creators of our own worlds through this whole magical process, really. And then Midgard connects to Jotunheim through Othala. Othala is the rune of inheritance, and most rune dissections will say it's inheritance. That means somebody might drop dead and leave you money. Well, I'm looking at it from a grander scale than that. This is the inheritance of yourself. Your birthright as a human being is to become both an uncontrollable force that once you set yourself into motion, once you move towards something, there will be absolutely nothing that can stop you, and at the same time balanced by the ability to create something in the physical world. So, yeah, those I absolutely love. I'll just sit and stare at those and meditate on that all day long. It's an amazing thing for me just to see the layout of how this relates, not necessarily just to like gods that we can think about and worship, but actually how this applies to who we are and where we're at in the whole grand scheme of things. The world of the gods connects to Midgard through the rune Gebo. What Gebo is it's supposed to look like an X. Gebo signifies gifts. The word itself, if you translate, is gift. But what we're talking about mostly with that rune is sacrifice. That there are sacrifices that are made to the gods. Sacrifices either animal sacrifice, they perform human sacrifice, or sacrifice of any kind of ritual sacrifice. Burning incense is a form of sacrifice. or sacrificing in some kind of circumstance where, I'm going to sacrifice this in order to achieve this. And then in return, the gods are giving us gifts that correspond with whatever our sacrifice is that we've given. Okay, World of Svartalfheim, which one thing that's interesting as I look at all this is the in and outflow. We have a lot of things flowing into a lot of these and a lot of things flowing out. Midgard is almost entirely flowing outwards. Midgard does also flow out into Helheim, the world of mystery, through, this is an interesting, I think, expose of human nature, is through Hagala. The Hagala rune signifies, translated as hail. And what it basically means is circumstances that are out of our control, forces of nature, situations that we can't contain, things that just happens. It starts to hail, there's not much you can do but run for cover. And that's really what it's saying, is that we will not be driven to embrace mystery, to embrace the unknown, unless something gets us up our butts to make us do it. That on our own, we really need some kind of impetus, some kind of driving force that says, look, you've got so much going on, it's out of your control. The only way to handle it is to embrace the absolute unknown and start looking into that. And that is interesting in that I've noticed that most of the people who delve the deepest into occultism usually have some sort of massive trauma and abuse in their early childhood. But this is the Hagala rune. It's things pouring down upon you that are so out of your control that make you have to look outside of this world for answers. Now, Svartalfheim connects to Vanaheim through the Iwas rune. And Iwas is initiation into secrets, into forbidden knowledge, into the things that humans just don't normally have the capability of really understanding. And that is related most definitely with magic, and magic comes from the Vanir, in the purest sense. So in order to cross into creating things not with your hands, but with your mind, with your intentions and your willpower, does definitely rely on that initiation into the secret knowledge, which is occultism itself. That just by embracing traditional religion, traditional spirituality, you're not going to get that. You need to dive deep. And Jotunheim is connected to Muspelheim through the Peritho rune. And Peritho, most of the time, is said to be it's a cup. It's definitely it looks like a cup. It's symbolic of a cup, as most people say. Well, it's either a drinking cup or that it also relates to a gambling cup. That you would put dice or something much like dice in it, throw it around, and toss it and see what you get. That's one aspect of it. Of course, once again, most runospecists only take it at face value. Oh, the Norse people must have been pretty big gamblers. Well, no, I think they understood that there's a lot that's out of our control, and once we do throw the dice in any situation, there's only so much that we can really expect to occur and to reap from that. And that in specifically dealing with the Jotun as being allies, because the elves are allies, so if we're going to treat the giants like they're allies, we're rolling the dice. We notice that that Thor never ever leaves Asgard to go to Jotunheim without his hammer, because he knows he might have to kick some giant ass. So it's one of those that you need this chaotic force, you need that acausal element in order to fully develop into who you want to be, to fully embrace your birthright. But at the same time, you're taking a chance with them to treat them as allies of any sort. And Helheim
connects with Jotunheim. I'm sure there'll be some arcane reason somebody will find that I use green for these rather than red.
Marker works better.
It's not arcane enough, damn it. Through the rune Nauthiz. Now, Nauthiz is the rune of need. So anytime that you're in need, you have the need to call on something else. That really does summarize. First of all, we need to be forced into embracing the mystery and looking deeply into the mysteries of spiritual reality and of greater reality through circumstances that are out of our control, circumstances that we just can't grok with our normal brains. And so in order to go even further and embrace not only the mystery, but that which is absolutely dangerous, the Jotun. The Jotun, who are also known as the Thyrses, translates as thorns and means you're going to get pricked. You're probably going to get hurt by dealing with these things. But once again, that's how Odin and Thor got all of their knowledge, was going to the Jotun. So in that way, we have to have a strong need in order to get there. But that's the definite connection between those two. We go from Helheim, the mystery, into Svartalfheim, where things are created, is the rune Lagus, which is, again, a watery rune that symbolizes fertility. And so once again, we do have the fact that, or a statement at least, that to bring the mysteries and that which is spiritually mysterious into actually creation, where we're actually doing something with it to enhance our lives, there is a sexual component. And this could just be my interpretation for whatever reason, but it does. I do see a lot of those connections between man and the divine as having a sexual nature. The Asgard, the gods of war and intellect, were worshipped centuries later than the Vanir. The Vanir being love, sex, art, creativity, magic. That is a more fundamental human need than war and even intellect. And so the spiritual pathways definitely do connect with sexuality and definitely with the connection of people. That one thing that I think sets apart the Norse system from most other systems is it's not even close to as discriminatory or divisive as many other religions. It never says, if you don't worship these gods, you're not going to get this and that and the other. That it respects anybody who has power and demonstrates that power in their lives. And so yeah, that's I think that might be all the pathways. Nope. No, the connection between Lusafheim and Vanheim is so wow. Which is, it's the sun, it's power, it's force, and it's also enlightenment. The sun rune is much like the sun tarot card in that if you draw it, it basically means whatever dark circumstances you're currently experiencing, the morning's about to come, sunlight is going to prevail, and things are going to be all right. And again, there is a really interesting connection between Lusafheim and Vanheim in that they both seem to be filled with elves, and elves are present throughout actually most of the upper worlds, and elves are responsible not just for doing things like calling on them and saying go do this like we do in modern evocation of spirits, but also for teaching. They'll just show up and teach people information. You look at the Irish fairies, the same thing. They would show up and just teach people whatever they happened to want to know or whatever they needed to know at that moment. And the Soal rune is very, very potent in opening those pathways of initiatory knowledge. And Helheim connects to Lusofheim. This is where Thomas Carlson once again created this whole chart, where I disagree with him at, because he has this pathway of Taiwas being the leader, being a warrior. You can see it definitely has kind of a spear arrow look to it. He has that going from Helheim to Svartalfheim, but he also has Lagus going from Helheim to Svartalfheim. It's the only one that doubles on itself. All the others go to other worlds. And so as I kind of just meditated on this and looked at this, it seemed much more appropriate that Helheim will connect to Svartalfheim through the reproductive, sexual experience of humans, and then that Helheim will connect to the world. So the world of mystery will connect to the world of elves, and elves being our spiritual allies and friends, through leadership, through the ability, especially if you're getting into these mystical states, your ability to conquer that which you fear, that which is unknown, and then connect with those spiritual entities. Because unless you're unhinged, you're gonna have a little trepidation in experiencing not only the mysteries and that which is chaotic, but actually coming face to face with the spiritual entity that just pops in front of you and asks you what you want to know. And so it does take that kind of courage, bravery that is found in that rune. And Asgard flows to Svartalfheim through the Fehu rune. And Fehu is again a rune of cattle, and cattle in those days was a massive form of wealth. I mean, much more than gold or anything like that. But the only thing that you could trade that would be probably more valuable than cattle was a human slave, and even that, was kind of a toss-up. So the Asgard, being intellectual, not very emotional, not very creative, that when they went to go create, that their form of creation would be for prosperity, for things that actually create. I mean, a cattle was a pretty solid form of trade. So rather than like, hey, I'll sing you a nice song if you give me a piece of bread, it's like, I'll give you this cow for, whatever. And so to create something very substantial, specifically wealth related. And Asgard is connected to Jotunheim through the Ahas rune, which looks very much like our modern M, but it can be seen. It's the rune of the horse. That it's not just movement as the Rito rune is movement, but it's actually the vehicle upon which you will travel. And it's definitely said that there's a bridge, Bifrost, that goes basically between all of the worlds and connects with Asgard, that Thor, Odin, and all the others have to use to travel into these other worlds, and then specifically to Jotunheim, and it's the vehicle of travel. What I've kind of uncovered in my own experiences with this is that rune, that Ahas rune, Manas, and the vehicle of that Bifrost bridge is an analogy or a symbol for soul travel or astral projection. And that's how you get around to all of these, is through those arts and sciences. And I think that is it. So I just blasted through a whole bunch of information. Any questions at all, or comments, or discussion?
Does the Jotunheim connect to the creativity world? The way you have the elf.
Oh shit! Yes, thank you.
Sorry.
All right. See, you caught it. That's awesome. Yeah, it does. I thought I was reading one. All right. So it does. It connects through the Isa rune, which Isa is ice, and Isa would normally be definitely associated with Niflheim being complete immovability, and complete solidity.
Any thoughts?
Does it go from Jotunheim to the other one, or from the other to Jotunheim?
From Jotunheim to the two here.
It could just be your,
From being stagnant to progressing forward.
yeah, or your determination to create things.
And that could be definitely your determination to create things. Well, and also the fact that you've got an uncontrollable force mixed with ice, mixed with solidity, is an interesting prospect on its own. Once again, both an immovable object and an unstoppable force at the same time, pushing itself into creation for sure. Are there any others that you're seeing that I missed?
That'll be the club homework for you. Report back next week.
Right, yeah. We'll come back with a whole
What, bro?
expose on the ESA room.
She knew what?
Oh, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I was just saying, all hail the Nordic Christmas trees. Sorry.
We're getting close to you.
Now, anything comments, questions?